Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Teachers That Sparkle. And we are on episode number 19, almost hitting that milestone to 20, right? I hope you have been having a great week. I hope that things are going well for you. I know, again, we're in the thick of this and we're up and down and over and under with our emotions and the workload, and it can be overwhelming. And again, this is why we want to be sure to support you as much as possible and bring you this information to help you make the overwhelm feel a little more doable. So let's get started with this week's episode. As you know, we've been talking about grading and all of the important things about grading. We started with why we grade and the importance of making sure, we're being fair with our grading and honest with our grading, but also realizing that we're dealing with little humans or even though they're big humans, at the high school level, inside they're still little humans, right? They're still growing and building. And it's so important to make sure we get all of this as well done as we possibly can. And then last week we talked about communicating grades and some different strategies on how to make sure that we're getting the right information out. This week I wanted to talk to you a little bit about when students are struggling and when the grades really start to indicate that. Now, typically as a teacher, you're going to learn, especially as you get more experience, that you'll be able to observe, right, when students are not getting it. And it's going to look a few different ways. And just real briefly, because this week's episode is going to be pretty short, but I want to just remind us, if your gut tells you that you feel like your students are struggling, they're probably struggling, right? You're going to see some visual signs of that. You're going to see kids maybe procrastinating to getting started on their work. You're going to see kids that do some of it, but don't do all of it. You're going to see kids, maybe they just rush through it because they just don't know what to do otherwise, right? And they just want to get it complete. And you might see some kids even start to exhibit maybe some behavioral concerns. You may start to see kids just forgetting about their work and doing more conversing or talking, playing around, fidgeting with things, and maybe even some angry outbursts because they're feeling overwhelmed. Remember, we're dealing with tiny humans or tiny humans on the inside. And sometimes our kids don't always know how to ask for help, and they don't always know how to say, I don't get this, right? Or they feel, and this would especially hit as kids get older, 4th, 5th grade and up, they feel like they don't want to be embarrassed because they don't know how to do something that they see that their friends or the people in class with them know how to do. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you a quick story about me because this is pretty significant. I was a GT student growing up, and I went to one elementary school my whole time in elementary after we moved back to Iowa halfway through kindergarten. So from the second semester of kindergarten through 5th grade, I stayed at the same school. We lived in the same house. And although my family was very dysfunctional, my grandparents were very involved, and the school knew us and took care of us. And it was a place where we all felt comfortable and safe and secure. Now, I have to clarify, we all as students. My sister went to this school as well, but then she only went there through 4th grade, and then we moved. And my brother, I want to think, never started the school there because he would have been 4 when we moved. So he never started the school. He maybe he started kindergarten at that school. I can't even remember, but nonetheless, he didn't really have that community base with that school. Then I went to middle school, and the elementary and middle school was attached, and we lived in the same house. So I was there. My elementary teachers still saw me all the time. I felt very connected with them. So middle school wasn't a scary place for me because I knew many of the middle school teachers already because we were all connected in one building. It was just separate sections of the building. And I ended up breaking my leg in 6th grade pretty significantly. And I was in a cast from my toes to my hips for a long time. And I got a lot of treatment because of that, right? A lot of attention. I couldn't go up and down the stairs. We didn't have elevators and stuff like that back in the 80s, 70s, 80s. And so I connected with a lot of people. Plus, I was in the GT programs. And so when I got to sixth grade, I was so advanced as compared to some of the other students. There was me and one other student like this, that they couldn't even put us on the regular curriculum. They put us on our own kind of self-paced programs. And we spent a lot of time going to the computer. I say that like that because the computer was as big as my dining room table is right now, because it was back in the day. But nonetheless, that was kind of my foundation in education. At the end of sixth grade, we moved and I had to go to a different middle school. And this middle school was different. This middle school was a little more affluent, the community. And I didn't know anybody. Now, my cousin went to school there and she was in sixth grade. I was in seventh grade. But other than her, I knew nobody, right? And I was very upset with this move. And so at the end of sixth grade, when we were taking our end of the year assessments, I refused. I refused to do them. And my teachers were like, what's going on? You already know this information, come on, we need to get you into the right programs. You're going off to a new school. We want to have you set up to be successful. And it's funny as I say this, because my daughter went through this same kind of transition a little bit later, but the same thing ended up happening, which is so strange now that I think about that. But nonetheless, I did not want people to know I was smart. I didn't. I just wanted to blend in the crowd. We were not well off. We were not rich, but we were doing well enough to be able to move to the lower end of the more affluent neighborhood, if that makes sense. We were probably the poorest people in the rich neighborhood. Okay. And so I knew this. I was very self-aware even as a kid. And I kind of pulled myself back and wanted to just blend. I didn't want to be anybody that stood out. When I was on self-paced programs and going off to the computer lab for part of the class time, everybody knew that. Everybody saw me doing that, but it was okay because I was comfortable with those kids. I knew them my entire life and I knew those teachers my whole life. But this was something so new and scary, and I was so shy and intimidated and just wanted to blend. So my teachers told me, you're going to do this test. You don't have a choice. And I'm a rule follower. So I'm like, okay, fine. But I didn't even try. I just completed it. I just bubbled it in. That was it. And I turned it in. Probably maybe 7 minutes for each content area. Well, when I get to this new school, this is what ended up happening. They looked at my test scores and they put me in special classes, not GT classes. And it took my grandma and my grandpa coming up to the school and saying, this is not right, because I was miserable. I'm telling you, I got into these classes and I was miserable. They had to come in and they had to do some work with the administration at the school. Luckily, my grandma had gone to that school years and years prior, and some of the teachers were still there. I know, how crazy is that? That's what happens in small towns. But it all ended up working out. I say that because there's a reason. Sometimes even your strongest kids are going to struggle, and you have to be aware of this. You have to be able to observe. And if your gut is telling you, Sherry's struggling, and this is not typical and this is not normal, and I've got to do something about it, go with your gut, because chances are it's going to be right. Okay. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Is not just about your low achieving students. It's not just about the ones that might be in special programs. This is about your students, all of your students, and you need to be aware of that. The other thing that you need to be cognizant of is the fact of this. If 25% or more of your class is struggling on something, it is not a student problem. Now, I know that that sounds harsh, and I don't mean it to be harsh, but I do mean it to be direct. If 25% or more of your students are struggling, it is not a student problem. It is a teacher problem. It is an instruction problem. It doesn't mean you, teacher, are a problem. It means there is a problem. It doesn't mean you, teacher, are a bad person. It means there is a problem with the delivery of the instruction, the way you process through the instruction, the amount of practice you were able to give students. And I'm going to tell you a great way that you can start to measure this early. And that is this. If you teach a lesson and you say, okay, boys and girls, now you're going to do this assignment so I can see how you process this information. And you have every student or many of your students asking questions. I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? What do I do next? There's a problem. You can cut it off early, guys. You can say, oh gosh, that's not right. I need to stop and I need to go back. Okay. If one or two are confused, that's a different story. But 4, 5, 7, 10, you got to just swallow that pride and just realize there is a problem with the instruction. It's not a student problem. Okay. All right. So those are my 2 big things that you need to be thinking about. So now what do we do? What do we do when we know students are struggling and we've got to fix the students? Okay. You can't let them keep going. And I mentioned earlier, the faster that you can head the problem, right? You realize it, you can remedy it. The faster you can do that, the better this is going to be. Because when we learn something wrong, now we have to unlearn it, which is a process, and relearn it the correct way, which is another process. 2 processes later, you can move on to the next skills, right? But if you can realize it and take this information seriously and know there's a problem and stop it and say, okay, hold up, we got to rethink this. The quicker you can do that, you can save more students that way. All right. Now, you're going to get to a point where you're going to think like, okay, well, I'll know when I have grades. Don't wait until you have grades, guys. Don't wait until that. So even if you do have a lot of stuff you're grading and you're backed up. I'm working with someone right now and a comment was made, I'm backed up on grading. Even if you're backed up on grading, do something, do an exit ticket with maybe 1 or 2 questions so you can quickly review and get a gauge for what's happening with your kids, okay? This is so important. It's going to save you so much time in the long run. All right, let's fast forward. Now we're at grading time and you realize that you have students that are failing. What are we going to do? We talked last week about how important it is to communicate, right? So that is most important. Communicate it with families, do it early, do it often, do it as soon as you can, and don't do it through text message. Don't do it through email. Do it with a face-to-face if possible or phone conversation. Then you need to have a plan. And I think you need to make sure that when you talk to the parent, you're really being real clear, and even the student. Okay, I need to tell you about this, just like we talked about last week, right? I need to tell you about this. This is what I've seen happen. I'm going to develop a plan and I'm going to share it with you as soon as I have it. If you don't have the plan yet, okay? Parents want to know that you're going to take care of their child, because the first thing they're going to be thinking is, oh my gosh, do I need to go get a tutor? And now this is money out of my pocket. We're public educators, most of us on here, right? If you're private, if you're charter, it might be something a little bit different, but we're public educators for the most part. We do not need parents spending their money remedying what we do for them for free, okay? That's not how the world works, and that's how public education gets a bad rap. So we need to be really aware of that. As soon as you know what's happening, you need to get that communication going. And then as soon as you can, get a plan. Now, if you're pretty new, you're going to want to network with your teams, right? Your mentors, your team leaders, your colleagues, people to know what could be the plan. What could it be? Chances are your school is going to have something to target the kids that are struggling. But a lot of times that happens, especially if you're in a state where the accountability is pretty high stakes. It's going to be based more on big assessments that your district has you administer to kids rather than report card grades. Okay. So this is kind of going to be something you're going to have to design a little bit better, but check and make sure, because every district is going to be a little different. Every school is going to be a little different, right? And get the data. Figure out what exactly is going on. This is going to take some conversations. Your students need to feel comfortable with you. They need to feel like they can tell you, you know what, Ms. Dixon, I just didn't get what you were telling me. Okay, Johnny, well, why didn't you ask me? Well, I didn't want the other kids to know that I didn't get it, so I pretended. And then we did these assignments, and then I didn't get my grade back until like the next week. And so I didn't know how to fix it at that point. And then I started to feel a little bit overwhelmed, and I didn't feel like I could fix it. And I thought that you knew, and so I just didn't ask questions. That's real. That's reality. You're going to hear that from students. You're going to hear from students, I don't know what happened. I just don't get it. That's real. You're going to hear that. And then you're going to hear, you know what? I know how to do multiplication, but I don't know how to do multiplication when it comes to the word problems. The word problems mix me up. That's it, valid information. So all of this, you're going to need to have these conversations, maybe more than one time. And you're going to need to really figure out, you're going to need to go back and really look at the work. This is why I always told my students, I need to see your thinking. I had students, I taught math, I taught language arts, taught science, I taught all of it. And even as a principal, I tell the students, it's so important that you show your work no matter what content you're working on. I need to see your processing, because I can't, and this is how I would say it to them, I can't open your head and look at your brain, right? And they'd be like, well, no. Okay, so I don't know what your thinking is. I need to see this work. And guys, the more you do and start getting into the practice of doing that, you're going to remedy a lot of this, because you're going to know it early. It's not going to wait. You're not going to wait until it's report card time to go, oh, Jesus, what's going on? Hold the phone here. We gotta fix some things. Because ultimately, what is our job as an educator? It is to teach the students so that they can achieve the standards. Okay. It's not just about delivering or regurgitating information. We need to be able to teach it to them so that they understand it, so that they can apply it to the work that they have to do. There's so many people. As a matter of fact, I was at a conference this week and they were talking about school, and they were talking about how schools do people wrong because they teach them a lot of knowledge, but they don't teach them application skills. It hit my heart, y'all. It hit me hard. And it's because it's so true. I've been saying this for years. We teach kids just enough to be able to be at the minimum standard, but we're not teaching them how to problem solve. We're not teaching them how to apply. We're not teaching them how to take their thinking to the next level. So just to recap, you need to really be observing your students when they're working. You need to go with your gut when you know something doesn't feel right. Stop, halt. It's okay, just stop. I don't even care if your principal's in the room, okay? I promise you, your principal's going to be more proud of you for realizing something went sideways and you fixed it right away, rather than just letting it go on. You need to be able to communicate to the families. Something's not right here. I just need you to know I'm going to make a plan. I'm not sure what the plan is yet, but I'm going to get with you, and then follow up and get that plan out there. Talk to your students and really look at their work. You need to know where the breakdown is happening, and then do something about it. And if you don't know what to do about it, reach out to your people, your team leaders, your colleagues, your mentors, your principal, anybody. A principal is there because they're the head learner, right? They're the head teacher. They're the head instructor. So use your resources, use your tools, use your gut, use your instincts. And more importantly, just remember, our job is to make sure that our students are successful, not just that we regurgitate information. All right, y'all. As I said, this week was going to be a little bit shorter, but I wanted to get this information out to you, and we're going to continue talking about grading, I think, one more week, and we're going to be talking about when students are in special programs that require accommodations and modifications, and that one's going to be a great one. So tune in next week for that. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week, and I will talk with you soon.